Hi, good morning. So I am going to give a demonstration on SharePoint administration from MindMajix. Okay, so myself, I'm a SharePoint consultant working for a product-based company in IT sector, and I'm carrying 13 plus years of experience into SharePoint and Microsoft technologies like Teams, OneDrive, Streams, Microsoft 365, Power Platform, which includes Power Automate, Power Apps, and all this stuff. So majorly, I involve into the business cases, problem solving using no code, code-free solutions using out-of-the-box SharePoint configurations, Power Apps, and Power Automate stuff. So mostly, I help organizations to unlock the power of SharePoint and as well as Microsoft products, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, and all these technologies and products. So basically, it deals with migrations from legacy editions for SharePoint to the latest SharePoint Online and on-prem editions. So I do consulting and training. So this is all about me. About this demo, I'm going to deliver a couple of items here. So what is SharePoint and the evolution when it was started by Microsoft, and what are the features that we can leverage in on-premise SharePoint, and the different types of SharePoint target audience, and what is meant with collaboration in SharePoint and the SharePoint user adoption. So these are the basic points which I'm going to cover in this demo. So basically, Microsoft SharePoint is a Microsoft product which was primarily focused for the document management and collaboration platform. So that helps many of the organizations to securely store their content within SharePoint. So we have many more features within SharePoint, like enterprise content management. We call it as ECM, WCM, web content management in a collaborative manner by using this SharePoint. So SharePoint offering an on-premises version of SharePoint, which we can install on the organization infrastructure, and that can be managed by SharePoint administrators. So the evolution when it was first started means in 2001, Microsoft has firstly launched this product, and they named it as a Microsoft Portal Server initially. So in 2000 year, so by now Microsoft SharePoint has completed 21 years now. So it 21 years old, and the first launch was in the month of March 2001, and they named it as Microsoft Portal Server. And this first iteration Microsoft Portal Server, they primarily largely focused on the document management side. Initially, it was a main document management application, and then the followed by 2003, they have launched another updated product which says Microsoft SharePoint Server, Microsoft Windows SharePoint Server. So that means WSS 2003. So in WSS 2003, they have improved some UI, and also they have added some couple of collaborative features also in the 2003 edition. So the Microsoft was keep on adding new features and enhancements for each and every year of release. So post 2003, again Microsoft relaunched another version of SharePoint, and they named it as MOSS, MOSS. That means Microsoft Office SharePoint Server. So that was released in 2007. And 2007 afterwards, they have released a couple of other versions of the upgraded features, in 2010, 2016, so 2013, 2016, and the latest is 2019. So we have many more features starting from 2001, and the latest edition is 2019. So this Microsoft 2019 has many more features with ongoing Microsoft journey, improving SharePoint user interaction, and also modern sites. They have integrated modern pages, modern list libraries, news, communication sites. There are many features that have they integrated in this latest 2019 version of SharePoint. And what is the future of on-premises SharePoint? So since when we are talking about SharePoint, so SharePoint offers on-premise SharePoint and as well as SharePoint Online. So as we are dealing with on-premise SharePoint, so what about the future of SharePoint? So Microsoft is focusing both on-premise and as well as online. So many of the organizations, they don't want to move into the cloud due to their security reasons. So they wanted to have their data in their on-premise, so that they choose Microsoft on-premise as a platform or securely storing their content within the organization premises. So for that reason, so Microsoft is giving this on-premise edition and with more features that similar to the SharePoint Online, which is offering in M365. So all these features that we can leverage in on-premise, similar to SharePoint Online. So in order to maintain that, we need to have a proper infrastructure set up within the organization. And once everything is set up, in order to manage the SharePoint farm, so administrator, we have to engage a SharePoint administrator to manage their infrastructure. So wherein we are going to learn that course here to manage the enterprise organizations SharePoint farms. So in SharePoint, there are different types of target audience. So basically, as we are going to support SharePoint on-prem, so we call them as SharePoint administrators, and end users are the one of the other target audience, like users who are going to use these applications. So we call them as end users. So different types of users will be there in SharePoint, like members, contributors, owners, and site administrators. So we can leverage all these features within SharePoint by assigning a dedicated role for a certain users. So what are the features that we can leverage within SharePoint? So that means here we can use this as a content collaboration. That means in olden days, we have file share servers wherein we have to store all the files and need to provide security on the file share system. So that was not a feasible solution to manage the large scale data, wherein organizations have chosen this platform to store the content securely. So SharePoint, by using SharePoint, we can create n number of sites within the site collections. We can create site collections, subsites. To manage, to hold the documents, we need to create document libraries, lists to manage the items. So all this can be created under the site. So the enterprise level, we can have structure defined, new structure defined, and start creating these web applications for each and every department and provide security for the individual departments. So once we provide access to that relevant team, what they could do using this SharePoint. So they can start uploading the documents and they can share the files or the folders from the SharePoint site itself on a one click. So it is easily shareable. It is called file sharing. And we can also keep track of the versions. So that means when there is a document uploaded within SharePoint, and if somebody modifies the document, we can have the version history maintained within the SharePoint. So that means who has modified the document, when it was last modified, what content has been modified. And there are other features like we can also restore the documents to the previous versions. So this is the beauty of SharePoint using this version history. We can have audit trails, everything enabled. As an administrator, we have to enable all this stuff at the document library and the site level. And so that we can easily manage the content within the SharePoint in a collaborative manner. And what are the additional features that SharePoint offers? So SharePoint offers search, a modern search capability. That means we can search a file within thousands of records. So search in file share server, it won't be relevant for to search a single item within that file share server. But in SharePoint, on the fly, you could search a file with an extension or a file with name. So we can easily set within the SharePoint sites. So, and also SharePoint is giving a much more flexibility for end users in sometimes. By mistakenly or unfortunately, if they have deleted some contents within SharePoint, they can easily restore from the recycle bin, like how we use it or Windows Explorer recycle bin. So the same set of features that can be used within SharePoint. So that means end user can also restore by, unfortunately, if end user also deletes the content from the recycle bin, being an administrator, you will have that privilege to restore the content from a secondary administrator recycle bin. So these are all major things that can be managed by administrator, not only the recycle bin stuff. The administrator can configure number of sites for each team, and they can set assign permissions for each department and sites. And in SharePoint, what is meant by user adoption here? So since organizations are investing a huge money on SharePoint infrastructure, without having a user adoption, it would be a big failure. So that means all the enterprise organizations, they have to encourage all the users to start using this SharePoint and leverage the features that were exist in the SharePoint. So what is our role being an administrator? So we should be able to provide all the documentation, like what are the features, what how that can be leveraged within our regular work. So that means I have something like I need to automate some jobs, or I need to automate some document wherein it should go through different approval process. So then we need an administrator who can configure the workflow for us. So he can set assign approvals, and the document should be routed to the necessary approvals, and the document can be finally published post the approvals. So this is one of the action that can be taken care by the administrators. So here SharePoint is giving more features that we no need to rely on a developer. So that means Microsoft SharePoint is offering that feature that can be directly plug and play within your SharePoint sites. So Microsoft is giving web part based news announcements, calendars, lists, and all this stuff out of the box. So we don't need to develop anything from scratch. So we don't need to rely on developers. So being an administrator, you can customize the SharePoint site within with rich user interface. So likewise, so the form administrator will have the highest privilege to configure these web applications, site collections, sites, and also we can set quotas for sites, how much storage that needs to be allocated for each site. So you can set reminders or the mail alerts when that site reaches the threshold limit of the quota. So these and all should be managed by the SharePoint administrators. So for this, so as I said, that lack of adoption, user adoption, most of the organizations failing using the SharePoint as a document management system. So users, they don't think like SharePoint will be useful for them sometimes. So SharePoint is offering so much. So user might not be aware of that. So we have to educate them to use SharePoint as a platform, a secure place to store the content. And the SharePoint admin training that we develops all the skills that requires to advance your career as a SharePoint certified administrator. So we'll gain valuable insights into the form configurations, customizations, SharePoint server, PowerShell scripting, and much more through our hands-on sessions that we are offering from our MindMajix with real-time examples. Okay, so along with these trainings, our course outline, which includes introduction of SharePoint and planning on installing SharePoint server. So how to mitigate, like if there is a requirement, like I need to build or set up a SharePoint within an organization, how to plan that. So how many number of users are going to use this application, how many concurrent users they are going to access the sites. So these and all needs to be planned accordingly based on the user requirements, and we need to build the SharePoint form. So these and all will be covered in the planning and installing SharePoint server section. And we have many more service applications to leverage within SharePoint. So configuring service application part will cover those service applications like secure store, different service applications we have, secure store service, Excel service, Infobot service. So different services that can be used to configure and administer those service applications. So these are all will be managed by the SharePoint administrators within the organization. And administering and automating SharePoint. So few automation work, like as I said, for the workflow configurations and all can be managed by the administrator instead of relying on developers. So administering, like managing the SharePoint infra from Microsoft usually releases security updates, cumulative updates, patches on a frequent basis. So being an administrator, we should be able to set up or update the farm with the latest service packs and cumulative updates. So that is going to be covered in that administering and automating SharePoint patching process and all this stuff. So, and monitoring SharePoint servers. So Microsoft SharePoint is offering a beauty like monitoring. So across the SharePoint farm, so we no need to go and each and every service to see whether it is running or not. So Microsoft has a great feature called Health Analyzer and Monitoring section. So where administrators can put focus on, and by looking at that monitoring or health analyzer section, they can take all like whether the server is running out of space or SQL server is running out of adequate space or resources on the physical machines. So that and all can be monitored easily, and you could also write some PowerShell scripting to monitor the SharePoint farm and trigger notifications to the management. So that can be covered in the monitoring section. And then PowerShell scripting. So basically, and the administrator can write some basic PowerShell scripts to export or import the site data, and they can upload into the another tenant or another site. So we can take backup by using the PowerShell script. We can export, import, we can generate reports using PowerShell. So these and all will be covered in the PowerShell scripting section. So next, securing SharePoint deployments. So in order to provide security, what kind of access, what kind of additional security needs to be set up. So these and all should be managed by the administrators. So administrator has to configure the site SharePoint sites in such a way to provide privileges based on the department or site owner's requirement, like visitors, members, who needs access, ownership, and all this stuff. Along with that, so we provide after the successful course completion, we'll give some practice tests, assist them in the interview questions, how to prepare and all this stuff. So that will be provided post the course completion. Next, add-on topics will be also covered, like since we have both on-prem and online, so we'll give some basic introduction on SharePoint Online for all the professional users who are going to get trained from our MindMajix. And also, so we'll just give some glimpse on SharePoint versus OneDrive differences. So majority of the organizations use OneDrive. So we'll cover both the differences between this OneDrive and how the OneDrive can be leveraged within the organizations. And also that SharePoint Online that comes under a product roof called M365 that will give some basic information on M365, Microsoft 365. Earlier it was named as O365. Microsoft recently they changed this name to M365. So that will give some basic glimpse on this M365 section post the trainings. And about the course materials, so we are going to provide some basic documentation on how to set up an enterprise SharePoint farm. The documentation will be provided on it. And we have around 10 plus service applications that we can create under a SharePoint tenant. or farm. So those service applications, we will give that configuration documentation for each and every service application, and also basic PowerShell scripts also will be shared to the users who are going to learn from the MindMajix, and also the best practices like how to manage SharePoint farm, how to do the SharePoint patching, and all this stuff. Mostly, we'll provide the basic best practices information to the users. And post completion of this course, we are going to offer a project based training as well. So we'll be giving a task for each and every individual. So the project 1 and project 2 will be giving 2 projects for them. So like setting up a complete SharePoint from scratch using UI method, and as well as PowerShell scripting using PowerShell. And we also give a task like creating a form backup and restore and all this stuff. So sites backup and restore, and database attach and detach methods. That means when we are migrating from a legacy editions from 2010 or 2013 to the latest 2019, so in such scenarios, this content database detach method will be useful for them, like to migrate the environment from legacy to the latest editions. So along with that, we'll give a new project like creating a blank web application, and from there creating site collection sites, and also at the library levels how they can set notification alerts. So each and every topic that we have covered, we'll try to give max as a project for each and every individual for the content and collaboration sharing. So the admin activities, all this will be covered in these projects. Okay, so the lab prerequisites also will be shared by our MindMajix. So this is the basic prerequisites who are going to learn the SharePoint administration. The system requirements are presented on my screen here. And we also, at the end of the training, we do some mock interviews on based on like the real-time questions. So they will make them comfortable to crack the interviews in real time. So by going through these mock interviews. So this is all about our training strategy from the MindMajix side, and also we'll give some basic certification information, like if one should wanted to get certified on a particular platform, what is the certification path for them. So we'll share the information and guide them on get certified from the Microsoft. So this will give a value add while updating their CVs and attending the real-time interviews. So this will be an added advantage for the SharePoint administrators who get the certified from the Microsoft as well as from the MindMajix. Okay, so that's all. This is all about the SharePoint administration demo.